The Percy Jackson series on Disney Plus' 7th episode is entitled I Go Down with the Ship, and it's also chapter 16 of the Sea of Monsters book. Like my previous reviews, I'll be linking down below my playlist of my season 2 episodes reviews so that you guys can catch up on not just my thoughts, but the episodes themselves, because I break down scenes alongside what I think. And since the show is ending next week, I had to give a spoiler warning for the show and the Sea of Monsters book, because I will compare the two mediums in this video. So with that, let's get started. This episode starts with an intense scene already. We see flashes of the same flashback we got a glimpse of in episode 4 of season 2, specifically about Thalia's sacrifice. We see the moment with the Furies about to attack Thalia, Luke, and Annabeth, before getting a shot of Chiron talking about Thalia's fate. It's a very powerful scene as young Annabeth looks at the tree that was once her friend, and I love how Luke reacts over here. Luke looked absolutely heartbroken, and the way his voice breaks when he demands what the hell happened to Thalia was amazing acting on Charlie Bushnell's part. I praised his acting in episode 3 as well, because he was able to deliver lines pretty accurate to Luke, especially when talking about Thalia. Thalia and Luke have a lot of history, as the two of them went on the run for 2 years, and were very close friends, to the point that a lot of fans like me would argue that they were more than friends at one point in their journey together. This romance aspect isn't explicitly said so far in the show, but I do like just how much they're establishing Thalia and Luke's relationship, because so far, their close bond feels pretty accurate to the book. Going back though, Luke repeatedly asked Chiron as to where Thalia is, even if Chiron clearly stated that Thalia is in the tree in front of them. This is noteworthy, because as we learn in episode 3 of season 2, Luke thinks that Thalia was turned into a tree as a curse and not a blessing.
That tree is her curse. She'd be glad to see it fall.
So in this flashback, Luke is clearly saying that the tree and Thalia are not equal to one another. To Luke, poisoning the tree was freeing Thalia from the prison that she was cursed to live with. This is actually a really interesting idea that I never expected, because this was never in the book, but I do like it. What's even more interesting though is that in this new episode, Luke says that Thalia is gone forever, while this was not the case in the book. In the book, Luke agreed to poison the tree mainly because Kronos promised him that Thalia will come back. And let me explain. Basically, Kronos is playing an amazing game of 5D chess. Okay, hear me out on this plan. The entire plot of the Sea of Monsters book is about getting the Golden Fleece to heal Thalia's tree because Luke poisoned it. Luke did this because he needs Percy and the gang to do the dirty work of getting the Golden Fleece, because Luke wants to use this fleece to bring Kronos back to life. Poisoning Thalia's tree was a very difficult decision for Luke, especially given how much he grew to care and trust Thalia beforehand. But he did it for Kronos, not just to start the war, but also because Kronos promised something even more personal. Kronos promised that they can use the Golden Fleece to bring Thalia back to life. And this actually happens in the last chapter of the Sea of Monsters, which is also why it's entitled The Fleece Works Its Magic Too Well. Kronos manipulated Luke with the idea that this would start not just Kronos' new age, but with the idea that Thalia would come back to him. And as established in not just the Sea of Monsters book, but also in season 2's episode 3, Luke believes that the Thalia he knew before would have joined him with Kronos, and that's pretty much why Luke wants Thalia back even more now. Luke wants Thalia by his side just like before, and this is pretty clear in the books. In the show, Annabeth is the one who tells Luke about the idea of bringing Thalia back to life with the fleece, and Luke is actually stunned. Luke tells Annabeth it isn't possible, but it's clear he's doubting it, especially since in the next scene, we actually see him ask Kronos about why Kronos didn't tell him about Thalia. And to be honest, I'm not really sure what to feel about this change. I feel like the filmmakers are trying to show Luke's inner conflict with Kronos, especially with the last scene of Luke convulsing in pain because of Kronos' voice, and Luke even begged Kronos, saying he was loyal to the Titan Lord. This latter part of the episode gave me chills, because Book Luke always did everything to please his master as well. Like what Luke said in the show, he gave everything to Kronos, even risking the life of his best friend trapped in a tree. This scene truly highlights how manipulative Kronos can be, and it honestly makes him an even more terrifying villain. And now, let's get more of the plot into this episode. We get to see the outside of the Princess Andromeda and meet an entirely new character who was never from the book. He's a demigod son of Aphrodite named Aiden, and he gets tricked by Percy and the rest to get intel on Luke's ship. They also grab the Kronos keycard, which, as I mentioned in my episode 3 review, was not really in the book, but honestly a pretty neat addition. Aiden is a demigod from camp who sided with Kronos, and it's kind of like our new character Allison Sims. And as Clarisse interrogated him, there's a cool mention of charm speak. We don't get introduced to charm speak in the PJO series, but we do know it's a powerful ability of Aphrodite children in the Heroes of Olympus books. We meet a demigod daughter of Aphrodite named Piper McLean, and she was very powerful with charm speak. So seeing Aiden try to use charm speak is pretty cool for book readers like me. Another cool Easter egg we get is when Grover tells Percy and the rest that they can't contact camp because the iris messages were down in the area. And it may be a small moment now, but it's actually a very, very good reference to the Trials of Apollo series. The Trials of Apollo happens many months, or even years after PJO, and a few months after the Heroes of Olympus. It's actually the most recent Riordan series timeline-wise, so I'm kinda surprised they're including it now in Season 2. Before I explain this reference, spoiler warning for the Tyrant's Tomb or the 4th book of the Trials of Apollo. And for those who don't want to get spoiled, you can skip to whatever time is on the screen. But anyway, to book fans like me, the Trials of Apollo introduces the evil organization called Triumvirate Holdings, and they were 3 evil Roman emperors who actually supplied weapons and money for Kronos, or the main villain in PJO, and Gaia, or the Earth Goddess, and the main villain of the Heroes of Olympus. However, Kronos and Gaia were defeated in their respective series, which is why the Triumvirate decided to take matters into their own hands in the Trials of Apollo. In between the Blood of Olympus and the Hidden Oracle, the Triumvirate disrupted communication for months, for not just the iris messages, but also cell phones for mortals. And this is because, as we learn in the Tyrant's Tomb, they captured the god of silence, Harpocrates. Harpocrates managed to silence the communication networks, and that's why there's no signal here with Grover. And again, I know, that's a lot of information for just a small detail, but as a book fan, you kinda notice a lot of things that Rick references throughout the season. But anyway, this communication issue was shown as something that disrupts signals in the ship and doesn't really affect mortal technology, because as we see later on, Grover and Tyson were able to contact Sally Jackson, or Percy's mother. Adding Sally was an interesting idea that I never expected, because she was not in any of this at all in the book. Actually, the entire Grover and Tyson plotline of getting a means of transportation wasn't really a thing in the book as well. In the book, they were able to get Clarisse and the Fleece to Camp Haplid because they still had a little bit of money for a ride. But in the show, it's clear that they don't have money at all. But I do get why they made this change. They needed Grover and Tyson to do something, and they honestly make a pretty funny duo. Aside from this, I want to talk about the Percy and Clarisse moments in this episode. From the previous episode, they had a huge argument about Luke and the Fleece. Annabeth was dying, and Percy had to make the decision of giving Luke the Fleece to save her. Clarisse was against this, because in her eyes, her quest was getting the Fleece to save camp, and the only reason the camp was in danger in the first place was because of Luke poisoning Thalia's tree. As I mentioned before in my previous video, this all never happened in the book, so Clarisse and Percy arguing about this was a completely new idea. Also, because of what happened before, Clarisse kept reiterating in this episode that the reason they were there in the ship now was because of Percy, and Percy stands his ground and tells Clarisse they'll get Annabeth and the Fleece. As they argue though, it really shows just how different Percy and Clarisse's priorities are. Clarisse wants to get the Fleece to save the camp and prove her worth to her father, while Percy wants to save Annabeth because of his fatal flaw of personal loyalty. And I love seeing this contrast, because it's so accurate to how Percy and Clarisse were in the book as well. Added to this, I also want to give a shout out to the dynamic between Allison Sims and Luke. Throughout the season, Allison has honestly been kind of an afterthought for me. She does seem capable and strong, but we barely know anything about her. I'm not really sure if she'll be brought back to the next season of the show, but so far, she hasn't really been a striking character to me. I really think they could have done a bit more with her character, especially since she's competing with already established book characters like Annabeth, or Luke, or even Tyson. I know it's hard to do this in an 8-episode time frame, but so far, she hasn't really offered much to the table for me. She seems like another one of Luke's army, even if her character was pretty much a huge deal before the show was released. But anyway, there's this moment in the show when Allison takes the Fleece from Annabeth and gives it to Luke because she wants Kronos to rise right now. Allison and Luke seem to have a conflict of interest here because it's clear that she wants to get Kronos back, while Luke still seems to have some humanity in him because he wants the Fleece to fully heal Annabeth first. Allison even calls Luke out, telling him that he was using the Fleece to heal the enemy instead of completing the job. In response, Luke actually shuts Allison down and declares that Annabeth wasn't the enemy, and that it's his job to give the Fleece to Kronos. In this small moment, we get a glimpse of what the show is doing for Allison's character. I believe that she's a darker version of Luke who doesn't feel the same humanity as him. And I actually had this idea in my old video of discussing Allison's character. There, I went on about how Allison could be a foil to Annabeth. A foil in literature is basically a character who acts the opposite to another, and that's pretty much what they're doing right now. Allison has been encouraging Luke to embrace the dark side, while Annabeth is trying to be Luke's voice of humanity and reason, which would be very powerful in the final battle during the final book of PJO. One of the most controversial shots in the PGO series so far is this scene of Kronos with the fleece. A lot of fans have disliked it because this moment is a completely different look to the book, and unfortunately kind of references the Peter Johnson movies because in their version of the Sea of Monsters, Kronos also wakes up with the fleece. And thinking about it now, I also don't really like the fact that they placed the fleece on Kronos over here in this scene. Like, it stayed there for a while. And I'm not really sure why it took so long for Kronos to regenerate with the fleece. The fleece is supposed to be so powerful that it can heal anything. But why did it take so long for him to come back? Like, by the time Percy is there, I think Kronos should have been there already. I guess because it's hard to regenerate Kronos because he did get chopped up by Zeus in Tartarus, but either way, I thought of pointing it out because it kinda confused me. After the scene, we get moments about Percy and Clarisse and their respective missions. Clarisse gets stuck in a room with Luke's demigods, and they're playing a game called Mythomagic. We got introduced to Mythomagic in the third book of PJO, or the Titan's Curse, through a demigod son of Hades named Nico D'Angelo. Nico was obsessed with the card game, and even if we first saw this in the third book, the show introduced it earlier on in this small moment of season 1. Percy and Grover were playing Mythomagic in the first episode, and now they used it as another Easter egg in this moment with Luke's demigods. On Percy's side of the mission, we see him help Annabeth out, but Luke suddenly arrives. In this moment, Annabeth tries to reason with Luke, but as expected, Luke is not convinced. This moment soon leads up to Percy getting to the room with Kronos, and he takes the golden fleece. However, Kronos actually tries to taunt Percy with the Great Prophecy, or the prophecy that connects the entire 5 Percy Jackson books. At first, I thought Percy was going to let this pass and move on, because as I mentioned in my previous videos, Percy is not supposed to know too much about this prophecy. The only time he really understands or hears the lines are in the 5th book. However, the show surprised me yet again by making Kronos say lines from the prophecy itself. I am glad though that they stopped halfway through, but still, I really wish they would stop giving Percy more information. Percy is not supposed to know these lines of the prophecy just yet, because even in Greek mythology, the prophecy just gets worse the more you know about it. And this is why Chiron and Annabeth didn't want to tell Percy about this prophecy. But anyway, this moment soon leads up to what fans like me were waiting for. The Luke and Percy fight. In the book, this was an absolutely brutal fight on Percy's side, because around this time, Percy was rusty in sword fighting, so Luke managed to almost kill Percy. However, I was surprised when Percy managed to fight back pretty well. It was a pretty cool fight, and Percy soon leaves with the fleece. Percy then runs to an elevator, but suddenly gets stabbed by Luke in the last minute. Not gonna lie, that actually shook me, because I thought the fight was over by then. But I get it. In the book, Luke almost killed Percy, so I guess they had to include a scene of Percy getting really hurt. However, they cut off a pretty big moment in the book. What saved the day in the book after Luke almost killed Percy was Chiron and the party ponies arriving to finish the fight. But because of the different changes in the show, they didn't really show this moment with the centaurs. I get why they had to do this, but still. Chiron and the party ponies were already hinted on in the 2nd episode when Annabeth called Chiron in the Iris message. So, honestly, I kind of wish they showed it in this moment already. After Percy uses the fleece to heal himself, we soon get a scene with Percy, Clarisse, and Annabeth. Clarisse had to fight her way out of her room with Annabeth, and like the Percy and Luke fight earlier, these were amazing fight scenes. Clarisse and Annabeth managed to work together after arguing all the time before, so it was a nice touch on Clarisse needing friends to succeed in this quest. Aside from this, I of course had to mention Blackjack the Pegasus. Like in the book, Percy manages to free Blackjack from Luke's ship, and I love this moment so much. I love Blackjack from the books, but I wish they could have highlighted Percy's powers of talking to horses. I know they kind of showed it because Percy was talking and understanding Blackjack, but it wasn't really as clear to me when I first watched it, so I just want to point that out. Also, I love how they used Blackjack to let Clarisse go to Camp Half-Blood. That was a great way to show the line of Clarisse's prophecy and fail without friends to fly home alone. I was worried that they were not going to include it anymore because they cut off the original idea of the beach scene in the book, but it actually plays out just the same. Percy gives Clarisse the fleas because it's her quest, and like the prophecy said, she would have failed if she didn't have friends. But since they worked together, they prevailed, and she still ended up going home alone because this was her quest and she deserves the glory. Because there was only room for one person on Blackjack, Percy and the rest went to Sally's car. The episode ends with quite a cliffhanger for the finale. We see Percy and the rest in Sally's car, and Annabeth talks about how they can use the fleas to bring Thalia back to life. Percy gets quiet in the car, and I love this, because as we know in the books and the show, Percy feels uneasy about Thalia. Thalia has appeared as this mysterious demigod who could join Kronos, especially since the Great Prophecy could be about her, as she's a daughter of Zeus. We also hear from Annabeth and the Sea of Monsters that Thalia and Percy are eerily alike, to the point that if they met in real life, they would either be the best of friends or the worst of enemies. So I get that's why Percy looks uneasy in the car right now. The last scene we get is a powerful moment with Luke and Kronos, and I already explained this earlier. Luke convulses in pain as Kronos manipulates him, and Kronos' order is simple.
Kill the son of Poseidon.
His voice just gave me chills, and we end the episode with Luke agreeing to the job. Now, that was an insane episode. I rate it a 9.5 out of 10. It's a great installment in the series, and I'm so excited for the final episode next week. I really want to see how they end the story, so tune in for my next video, where I go through episode 8. So, how about you? What do you think of this episode? Let me know in the comments down below.